Parabhakti, the preparatory renunciation. We have now finished the consideration of what may be called the preparatory bhakti and are entering on the study of the Parabhakti or supreme devotion. We have to speak of a preparation to the practice of this Parabhakti. All such preparations are intended only for the purification of the soul. The repetition of names, the rituals, the forms, and the symbols, all these various things are for the purification of the soul. The greatest purifier among all such things, a purifier without which no one can enter the regions of this higher devotion, Parabhakti, is renunciation. This frightens many, yet without it, there cannot be any spiritual growth. In all our yogas, this renunciation is necessary. This is the stepping stone and the real center and the real heart of all spiritual culture, renunciation. This is religion, renunciation. When the human soul draws back from the things of the world and tries to go into deeper things, when man, the spirit which has here somehow become concretized and materialized, understands that he is thereby going to be destroyed and to be reduced almost into mere matter, and turns his face away from matter. Then begins renunciation. Then begins real spiritual growth. The Karma Yogi's renunciation is in the shape of giving up all the fruits of his action. He is not attached to the results of his labor. He does not care for any reward here or hereafter. The Raja Yogi knows that the whole of nature is intended for the soul to acquire experience, and that the result of all the experiences of the soul is for it to become aware of its eternal separateness from nature. The human soul has to understand and realize that it has been spirit and not matter through eternity, and that this conjunction of it with matter is and can be only for a time. The Raja Yogi learns the lesson of renunciation through his own experience of nature. The Jnana Yogi has the harshest of all renunciations to go through, as he has to realize from the very first that the whole of this solid-looking nature is all an illusion. He has to understand that all that is any kind of manifestation of power in nature belongs to the soul and not to nature. He has to know from the very start that all knowledge and all experience are in the soul and not in nature. So he has at once, and by the sheer force of rational conviction, to tear himself away from all bondage to nature. He lets nature and all that belongs to her go. He lets them vanish and tries to stand alone. Of all renunciations, the most natural, so to say, is that of the Bhakti Yogi. Here, there is no violence, nothing to give up, nothing to tear off, as it were from ourselves, nothing from which we have violently to separate ourselves. The Bhakta renunciation is easy, smooth flowing, and as natural as the things around us. We see the manifestation of this sort of renunciation, although more or less in the form of caricatures, every day around us. A man begins to love a woman. After a while, he loves another, and then the first woman he lets go. He drops out of his mind smoothly, gently, without his feeling the want of her at all. A woman loves a man. She then begins to love another man, and the first one drops off from her mind quite naturally. A man loves his own city, then he begins to love his country, and the intense love for his little city drops off smoothly, naturally. Again, a man learns to love the whole world, his love for his country. His intense, fanatical patriotism drops off without hurting him, without any manifestation of violence. An uncultured man loves the pleasures of the senses intensely. As he becomes cultured, he begins to love intellectual pleasures, and his sense enjoyments become less and less. No man can enjoy a meal with the same gusto or pleasure as a dog or a wolf. But those pleasures which a man gets from intellectual experiences and achievements, the dog can never enjoy. At first, pleasure is an association with the lowest senses. But as soon as an animal reaches a higher plane of existence, the lower kind of pleasures become less intense. In human society, the nearer the man is to the animal, the stronger is his pleasure in the senses. And the higher and the more cultured the man is, the greater is his pleasure in intellectual and such other finer pursuits. So, when a man gets even higher than the plane of the intellect, higher than that of mere thought, when he gets to the plane of spirituality and of divine inspiration, he finds there a state of bliss, compared with which all the pleasures of the senses or even of the intellect are as nothing. When the moon shines brightly, all the stars become dim, and when the sun shines, the moon herself becomes dim. The renunciation necessary for the attainment of bhakti is not obtained by killing anything, but just comes in as naturally as in the presence of an increasingly stronger light. The less intense ones become dimmer and dimmer until they vanish away completely. So, this love of the pleasures of the senses and of the intellect is all made dim and thrown aside and cast into the shade by the love of God Himself. That love of God grows and assumes a form which is called para bhakti or supreme devotion. Forms vanish, rituals fly away, books are superseded, images, temples, churches, religions and sects, countries and nationalities, all these little limitations and bondages fall off by their own nature from him who knows this love of God. Nothing remains to bind him or fetter his freedom. A ship all of a sudden comes near a magnetic rock, and its iron bolts and bars are all attracted and drawn out, and the planks get loosened and freely float on the water. Divine grace thus loosens the binding bolts and bars of the soul, and it becomes free. So, in this renunciation auxiliary to devotion, there is no harshness, no dryness, no struggle, nor repression, nor suppression. The Bhakta has not to suppress any single one of his emotions. He only strives to intensify them and direct them to God. The Bhakta's renunciation results from love. We see love everywhere in nature. Whatever in society is good and great and sublime is the working out of that love. Whatever in society is very bad nay diabolical, is also the ill directed working out of the same emotion of love. It is the same emotion that gives us the pure and holy conjugal love between husband and wife, as well as the sort of love which goes to satisfy the lowest forms of animal passion. The emotion is the same, but its manifestation is different in different cases. It is the same feeling of love, well or ill directed, that impels one man to do good and to give all he has to the poor, while it makes another man cut the throats of his brethren and take away all their possessions. The former loves others as much as the latter loves himself. The direction of the love is bad in the case of the latter, but it is right and proper in the other case. The same fire that cooks a meal for us may burn a child, and it is no fault of the fire if it does so. The difference lies in the way in which it is used. Therefore, love, the intense longing for association, the strong desire on the part of two to become one, and it may be, after all, of all to become merged in one, is being manifested everywhere in higher or lower form, as the case may be. Bhakti Yoga is the science of higher love. It shows us how to direct it. It shows us how to control it, how to manage it, how to use it, how to give it a new aim, as it were, and from it obtain the highest and most glorious results, that is, how to make it lead us to spiritual blessedness. Bhakti Yoga does not say give up, it only says love, love the highest, and everything low naturally falls off from him, the object of whose love is the highest. I cannot tell anything about thee except that thou art my love. Thou art beautiful. Oh, thou art beautiful. Thou art beauty itself. What is, after all, really required of us in this yoga is that our thirst after the beautiful should be directed to God. What is the beauty in the human face, in the sky, in the stars, and in the moon? It is only the partial apprehension of the real, all embracing divine beauty. He shining, everything else shines. It is through His light that all things shine. Take this high position of bhakti, which makes you forget at once all your little personalities. Take yourself away from all the world's little selfish clingings. Do not look upon humanity as the center of all your human and higher interests. Stand as a witness, as a student, and observe the phenomena of nature. Have the feeling of personal non attachment with regard to man, and see how this mighty feeling of love is working itself out in the world. Sometimes a little friction is produced, but that is only in the course of the struggle to attain the higher real love. Sometimes there is a little fight or a little fall, but it is all only by the way. Stand aside and freely let these frictions come. You feel the frictions only when you are in the current of the world. But when you are outside of it, simply as a witness and as a student, you will be able to see that there are millions and millions of channels in which God is manifesting Himself as love. Wherever there is any bliss, even though in the most sensual of things, there is a spark of that eternal bliss which is the Lord Himself. Even in the lowest kinds of attraction, there is the germ of divine love. One of the names of the Lord in Sanskrit is Hari, and this means that He attracts all things to Himself. He is, in fact, the only attraction worthy of human hearts. Who can attract a soul really? Only He. Do you think dead matter can truly attract the soul? It never did, and never will. When you see a man going after a beautiful face, do you think that it is the handful of arranged material molecules which really attracts the man? Not at all. Behind those material particles, there must be and is the play of divine influence and divine love. The ignorant man does not know it, but yet, consciously or unconsciously, he is attracted by it and it alone. So even the lowest forms of attraction derive their power from God Himself. None, O beloved, ever loved the husband for the husband's sake. It is the Atman, the Lord who is within, for whose sake the husband is loved. Loving wives may know this or they may not. It is true all the same. None, O beloved, ever loved the wife for the wife's sake, but it is the self in the wife that is loved. Similarly, no one loves a child or anything else in the world except on account of Him who is within. The Lord is the great magnet, and we are all like iron fillings. We are being constantly attracted by Him, and all of us are struggling to reach Him. All this struggling of ours in the world is surely not intended for selfish ends. Fools do not know what they are doing. The work of their life is, after all, to approach the great magnet. All the tremendous struggling and fighting in life is intended to make us go to Him ultimately and be one with Him. The Bhakti Yogi, however, knows the meaning of life's struggles. He understands it. He has passed through a long series of these struggles and knows what they mean and earnestly desires to be free from the friction thereof. He wants to avoid the clash and go direct to the center of all attraction. The great Hari, this is the renunciation of the Bhakta. This mighty attraction in the direction of God makes all other attractions vanish for him. This mighty, infinite love of God, which enters his heart, leaves no place for any other love to live there. How can it be otherwise? Bhakti fills his heart with the divine waters of the ocean of love, which is God Himself. There is no place there for little loves. That is to say, the Bhakta's renunciation is the vairagya or non-attachment of all things that are not God, which results from anurag or great attachment to God. This is the ideal preparation for the attainment of the supreme bhakti. When this renunciation comes, the gate opens for the soul to pass through and reach the lofty regions of supreme devotion or parabhakti. Then it is that we begin to understand what parabhakti is. And the man who has entered into the inner shrine of the parabhakti alone has the right to say that all forms and symbols are useless to him as aids to religious realization. He alone has attained the supreme state of love, commonly called the brotherhood of man. The rest only talk. He sees no distinctions. The mighty ocean of love has entered into him, and he sees not man in man, but beholds his beloved everywhere. Through every face shines to him his Hari. The light in the sun or the moon is all his manifestation. Wherever there is beauty or sublimity, to him it is all his. Such bhaktas are still living. The world is never without them. Such, though bitten by a serpent, only say that a messenger came to them from their beloved. Such men alone have the right to talk of universal brotherhood. They feel no resentment. Their minds never react in the form of hatred or jealousy. The external, the sensuous, has vanished from them forever. How can they be angry when, through their love, they are always able to see the reality behind the scenes? The naturalness of Bhakti Yoga and its central secret. Those who with constant attention always worship you, and those who worship the undifferentiated, the absolute of these, who are the greatest yogis? Arjuna asked of Sri Krishna. The answer was, those who, concentrating their minds on me, worship me with eternal constancy and are endowed with the highest faith. They are my best worshippers. They are the greatest yogis. Those that worship the absolute, the indescribable, the undifferentiated, the omnipresent, the unthinkable, the all comprehending, the immovable, and the eternal, by controlling the play of their organs and having the conviction of sameness in regard to all the things, they also being engaged in doing good to all beings, come to me alone. But to those whose minds have been devoted to the unmanifested absolute, the difficulty of the struggle along the way is much greater, for it is indeed with great difficulty that the path of the unmanifested absolute is trodden by any embodied being. Those who, having offered up all their work unto me, with entire reliance on me, meditate on me, and worship me without any attachment to anything else, them I soon lift up from the ocean of ever recurring births and deaths, as their mind is wholly attached to me. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12. Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga are both referred to here. Both may be said to have been defined in the above passage. Jnana Yoga is grand. It is high philosophy, and almost every human being thinks, curiously enough, that he can surely do everything required of him by philosophy. But it is really very difficult to live truly the life of philosophy. We are often apt to run into great dangers in trying to guide our life by philosophy. This world may be said to be divided between persons of demoniacal nature who think the caretaking of the body to be the be all and the end all of existence, and persons of godly nature who realize that the body is simply a means to an end, an instrument intended for the culture of the soul. The devil can, and indeed does, cite the scriptures of his own purpose, and thus the way of knowledge appears to offer justification to what the bad man does, as much as it offers inducements to what the good man does. This is the great danger in Jnana Yoga, but Bhakti Yoga is natural, sweet, and gentle. The Bhakta does not take such high flights as the Jnana Yogi, and therefore he is not apt to have such big faults. Until the bandages of the soul pass away, it cannot, of course, be free. whatever may be the nature of the path that the religious man takes. Here is a passage showing how, in the case of one of the blessed gopis, the soul binding chains of both merit and demerit were broken. The intense pleasure in meditating on God took away the binding effects of her good deeds. Then her intense misery of soul is not attaining unto him washed off all his sinful propensities, and then she became free. The chinta vipula hyalad क्षीण पुरा तचया तघा तदप्राप्ति महद्दुः क्ववतनीर निशेष पातका निरुच्छासतया muktim gatantya gopakanyaka. Vishnu Puran. In Bhakti Yoga, the central secret is, therefore, to know that the various passions and feelings and emotions in the human heart are not wrong in themselves. Only they have to be carefully controlled and given a higher and higher direction until they attain the very highest condition of excellence. The highest direction is that which takes us to God. Every other direction is lower. We find that pleasures and pains are very common and oft recurring feelings in our lives. When a man feels pain because he has not wealth or some such worldly thing, he is giving a wrong direction to the feeling. Still, pain has its uses. Let a man feel pain that he has not reached the highest, that he has not reached God, and that pain will be to his salvation. When you become glad that you have a handful of coins, it is a wrong direction given to the faculty of joy. It should be given a higher direction. It must be made to serve the highest ideal. Pleasure in that kind of ideal must surely be our highest joy. The same thing is true of all our other feelings. The Bhakta says that not one of them is wrong. He gets hold of them all and points them unfallingly towards God. The forms of love, manifestation. Here are some of the forms in which love manifests itself. First, there is reverence. Why do people show reverence to temples and holy places? Because he is worshipped there, and his presence is associated with all such places. Why do people in every country pay reference to teachers of religion? It is natural for the human heart to do so, because all such teachers preach the Lord. At bottom, reverence is a growth out of love. We can none of us revere him whom we do not love. Then comes preeti, pleasure in God. What an immense pleasure men take in the objects of the senses. They go anywhere, run through any danger to get the thing which they love, the thing which their senses like. What is wanted of the Bhakta is this very kind of intense love which has, however, to be directed to God. Then there is the sweetest of pains, viraha, the intense misery due to the absence of the beloved. When a man feels intense misery because he has not attained to God, has not known that which is the only thing worthy to be known, and becomes in consequence very dissatisfied and almost mad, then there is viraha, and this state of the mind makes him feel disturbed in the presence of anything other than the beloved. Ekaratiya chikitsa. In earthly love, we see how often this viraha comes. Again, when men are really and intensely in love with women or women with men, they feel a kind of natural annoyance in the presence of all those whom they do not love. Exactly the same state of impatience in regard to things that are not loved comes to the mind when para bhakti holds sway over it. Even to talk about things other than God becomes distasteful then. Think of Him, think of Him alone, and give up all other vain words. Anya vacho vimunchaya. Those who talk of Him alone, the Bhakta finds to be friendly to Him, while those who talk of anything else appear to him to be unfriendly. A still higher stage of love is reached when life itself is maintained for the sake of the one ideal of love, when life itself is considered beautiful and worth living only on the account of that love. Tadarth prana saranthan. Without it, such a life would not remain even for a moment. Life is sweet because it thinks of the beloved. Tadiyata, hisness, comes when a man becomes perfect according to bhakti, when he has become blessed, when he has attained God, when he has touched the feet of God as it were, then his whole nature is purified and completely changed. All his purpose in life then becomes fulfilled. Yet, many such bhaktas live on just to worship him. That is the bliss, the only pleasure in life which they will not give up. O King, such is the blessed quality of Hari that even those who have become satisfied with everything, all the knots of whose hearts have been cut asunder, even they love the Lord for love's sake. The Lord, whom all the gods worship, all the lovers of liberation, and all the knowers of the Brahman. Yam sarve deva namaryanti mumukshavi brahmavadinisheti. Such is the power of love. When a man has forgotten himself altogether and does not feel that anything belongs to him, then he acquires the state of the Deity. Everything is sacred to him because it belongs to the beloved. Even in regard to earthly love, the lover thinks that everything belonging to his beloved is sacred and so dear to him. He loves even a piece of cloth belonging to the darling of his heart. In the same way, when a person loves the Lord, the whole universe becomes dear to him because it is all his. Universal love and how it leads to self surrender. How can we love the Vyashti, the particular, without first loving the Samashti, the universal? God is the Samasti, the generalized and abstract universal whole, and the universe that we see is the Vyasti, the particularized thing. To love the whole universe is possible only by way of loving the Samasti, the universal, which is, as it were, the one unity in which are to be found millions and millions of smaller unities. The philosophers of India do not stop at the particulars. They cast a hurried glance at the particulars and immediately start to find the generalized forms, which will include all the particulars. The search after the universal is the one search of Indian philosophy and religion. The Jnani aims at the wholeness of things, at that one absolute and generalized being, knowing which he knows everything. The Bhakta wishes to realize that one generalized abstract person in loving whom he loves the whole universe. The yogi wishes to have possession of that one generalized form of power, by controlling which he controls this whole universe. The Indian mind, throughout its history, has been directed to the kind of singular search after the universal in everything, in science, in psychology, in love, in philosophy. So, the conclusion to which the Bhakta comes is that if you go on merely loving one person after another, you may go on loving them so for an infinite length of time without being in the least able to love the world as a whole. When at last the central idea is, however, arrived at that the sum of total of all love is God, that the sum total of the aspirations of all the souls in the universe, whether they be free or bound or struggling towards liberation, is God. Then alone it becomes possible for anyone to put forth universal love. God is the Samasti, and this visible universe is God, differentiated and made manifest. If we love this sum total, we love everything. Loving the world, doing it good, will all come easily then. We have to obtain this power only by loving God first. Otherwise, it is no joke to do good to the world. Everything is His, and He is my lover. I love Him, says the Bhakta. In this way, everything becomes sacred to the Bhakta because all things are His. All are His children, His body, His manifestation. How then may we hurt anyone? How then may we not love anyone? With the love of God will come, as a sure effect, the love of everyone in the universe. The nearer we approach God, the more do we begin to see that all things are in Him. When the soul succeeds in appropriating the bliss of this supreme love, it also begins to see Him in everything. Our heart will thus become an eternal fountain of love. And when we reach even higher states of His love, all the little differences between the things of the world are entirely lost. Man is seen no more as man, but only as God. The animal is seen no more as animal, but as God. Even the tiger is no more a tiger, but a manifestation of God. Thus, in this intense state of bhakti, worship is offered to everyone, to every life, and to every being. Evam sarveshu bhuteshu bhaktir vyabhicharini kartavya panditair kyatva sarvabhutmayam harim. Knowing that Hari, the Lord, is in every being, the wise have thus to manifest unswerving love towards all beings. As a result of this kind of intense, all absorbing love comes the feeling of perfect self surrender, the conviction that nothing that happens is against us, aparatikulya. Then the loving soul is able to say, if pain comes, welcome pain. If misery comes, it will say, welcome misery. You are also from the beloved. If a serpent comes, it will say, welcome serpent. If death comes, such a bhakta will welcome it with a smile. Blessed am I that they all come to me. They are all welcome. The bhakta in this state of perfect resignation, rising out of intense love to God and to all that are His, ceases to distinguish between pleasure and pain in so far as they affect him. He does not know what it is to complain of pain or misery. And this kind of uncomplaining resignation to the will of God, who is all love, is indeed a worthier acquisition than all the glory of grand and heroic performances. To the vast majority of mankind, the body is everything. The body is all the universe to them. Bodily enjoyment is their all in all. This demon of the worship of the body and of the things of the body has entered into us all. We may indulge in tall talk and take very high flights, but we are like vultures all the same. Our mind is directed to the piece of carrion down below. Why should our body be saved, say, from the tiger? Why may we not give it over to the tiger? The tiger will thereby be pleased, and that is not altogether so very far from self sacrifice and worship. Can you reach the realization of such an idea in which all sense of self is completely lost? It is a very dizzy height on the pinnacle of the religion of love, and few in this world have ever climbed up to it. But until a man reaches that highest point of ever ready and ever willing self sacrifice, he cannot become a perfect bhakta. We may all manage to maintain our bodies more or less satisfactorily and for longer or shorter intervals of time. Nevertheless, our bodies have to go. There is no permanence about them. Blessed are they whose bodies get destroyed in the service of others. Wealth, and even life itself, the sage always holds ready for the service of others. In this world, there being one thing certain, viz. Death, it is far better that this body dies in a good cause than in a bad one. We may drag our life on for 50 years or 100 years, but after that, what is it that happens? Everything that is the result of combination must get dissolved and die. There must and will come a time for it to be decomposed. Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad are all dead. All the great prophets and teachers of the world are dead. In this evanescent world where everything is falling to pieces, we have to make the highest use of what time we have, says the Bhakta. And really, the highest use of life is to hold it at the service of all beings. It is the horrible body idea that breeds all the selfishness in the world. Just this one delusion that we are wholly the body we own, and that we must, by all possible means, try our very best to preserve and to please it. If you know that you are positively other than your body, you have then none to fight with or struggle against. You are dead to all ideas of selfishness. So the Bhakta declares that we have to hold ourselves as if we are altogether dead to all the things of the world, and that is indeed self surrender. Let things come as they may. This is the meaning of Thy will be done. Not going about fighting and struggling and thinking all the while that God wills all our own weaknesses and worldly ambitions. It may be that good comes even out of our selfish struggles. That is, however, God's lookout. The perfected Bhakta's idea must be never to will and work for himself. Lord, they build high temples in your name. They make large gifts in your name. I am poor. I have nothing. So I take this body of mine and place it at your feet. Do not give up on me, O Lord. Such is the prayer proceedings out of the depths of the Bhakta's heart. To him, who has experienced it, This eternal sacrifice of the self unto the beloved Lord is higher by far than all wealth and power, than even all soaring thoughts of renown and enjoyment. The peace of the Bhakta's calm resignation is a peace that passeth all understanding and is of incomparable value. His aparatikulya is a state of the mind in which it has no interests and naturally knows nothing that is opposed to it. In this state of sublime resignation, everything in the shape of attachment goes away completely, except that one all absorbing love to Him in whom all things live and move and have their being. This attachment of love to God is indeed one that does not bind the soul but effectively breaks all its bondages.